What do you suggest the solution to the education system in Pakistan? What should be done?
Yeah, I think I've partially answered that as well, but really, as I said, um, we need to, in terms of the education system in Pakistan, I think the state needs to step in really, and it needs to take a lead. I'm not against private institutions. I think they play a very important and very constructive role. But if there is state sponsorship, as I should call it, for private institutes, then that difference that you see in terms of classes being accommodated, because of course private institutes have to run in a business model, right? So they can't really be expected to perform unless they really have that fee structure that goes with it. But then that fee structure automatically creates that gap. But if the state is actually funding them, and in our country, actually, at least for the higher education, this is happening to quite a degree by HEC. But I think we need to do it more. So we need to supplement it more from the state resources so that that difference and the gap between have and have nots can be bridged. So bright students, regardless of whether they can pay or they can't pay, they should be admitted and they should be given opportunity. But that should not just restrict to universities, you see, because we need to raise the level at the primary and secondary level as well. Right. So we should not have that distinction now where, okay, if you're coming from an O-level background, you can actually get admission there and there. But we should actually try to raise the level across the board, and that can happen if we actually invest in the primary and secondary education as well. And there, because in our country, state, to be very fair, um, does not really play that kind of a role which we are used to seeing it. For example, from my experience in Britain, state has a, people actually sometimes call it a nanny state because of the term, kind of things it tries to enforce, although it does not really infringe on personal liberties. But still, where it needs to influence things, it does. So that element is lacking from our society. We are more used to working in terms of private individuals, entrepreneurial groups, and things like that. So even when we are doing it like this, I think it's time now that uh, we actually feel more socially responsible about private organizations as well. Right. Again, these things can be promoted, but they can be enforced only if state is actually playing its role in that.
Okay. So it does, in your view, what are the main problems that students face in their educational life?
Um, uh, I think that's a question that you should answer.
But from your experience.
Yes, I mean, in terms of my experience, I think um, the biggest challenge for today's student is the number of distraction factors he is faced with. I mean, yes, that is one thing that has really changed to a lot of degree. I mean, we had our distraction factors, but today the number of distraction factors is just enormous. In a minute you're on Facebook, on the next you're on Twitter, then your mobile phones wouldn't let you rest.
Most of the students in Pakistan are facing a lot of financial problems, and to cover up those problems, they're like heading up for jobs. They're taking more jobs, like in various places with low salary jobs, where they can get as a call center or any restaurant to work. So those jobs are causing them not to focus entirely on their studies. And even though they're not even aware of that, there are so many scholarships, financial scholarships for them, they're not aware of that. So what can we do to cover them up and how to help them out? Because that's leading to their dropout, and their families are just forcing them to continue on with their job because there's no one else working at their house.
Yeah.
And they're not aware of the financial problems that are happening.
Um, I mean, I think this is a complex issue that what you just raised. Working while studying is something um, which is you can't really exclude that completely. There will always be a number of students who would be who would need to work while they are studying. Right. And I think it's how much the system actually supports you that is important. So, for example, in the Western countries, you generally get a very flexible kind of semester system.
Right.
So where you can actually vary your load. So the number of courses that you take in semester can be changed, and you can then also register as a part-time student. So you can do that. These things are present to some extent in our universities as well. But I think there is a need to improve them, especially when we are talking about NUST. We are actually working on this as well, that how to make our system a bit more flexible so that students can take as many courses as they can really cope up with for along with their work. So that is one thing. The other thing which I must also add is that it's not always that bad. As part of my own career as a master's and PhD as well, I have worked and I've worked in various roles. I have been a part-time software developer as well. So I have developed professional softwares while actually working for my master's and PhD. And that actually consumed a lot of time. But again, I would repeat the same point, that it depends on how you manage your time.
Right.
Okay, so there is a lot of time wastage of which we are actually not aware. So as a student, if you can deal with that wastage, if you can eliminate that wastage, I can assure you that even despite working, you can have very good performance, you can perform well, and you can still compete with the rest. And I can tell you that with confidence because, as I said, I've done professional work while studying. I have done voluntary work while studying. So in that sense, it really depends on how you manage. Now, as far as the scholarships are concerned, the last part of your question, definitely I think there is a need to make students more aware. But it's also not about making them aware, it's also about training them how to apply for these opportunities. Right. Because a lot of these scholarships would require a certain key things. So, for example, when you're studying for your bachelor's and then you want to continue for your higher education, a lot of scholarships actually require that you have done your GRE test, for example. Okay, but GRE is not a test that you can prepare overnight and then appear in it. The sort of skills that GRE actually requires to score well, you need to start preparing for these tests from the day you enter the university. So over the period of 3 or 4 years that you are actually passing through your undergrad program, then you can equip yourself with all the necessary skills, and then ultimately, soon after, you can give those tests and actually score well. So the key thing is that you need to be aware of what will be required at the end so that you can prepare yourself accordingly and think well in advance. Right. It's not about living day to day. It's about, okay, let's plan how as a student I want to see myself 10 years from now. Right. If you have that kind of vision, I can guarantee you can excel. But that's I think a very big challenge for educators and for society at large, that how to equip students for these long-term skills and long-term vision, especially living in an environment where we are so much pressed by the daily challenges that people actually forget and lose sight of the long term.
So do you suggest that students should take up co-curricular activities while studying?
Oh yes, definitely they should.
Because some of them just completely try to focus on.
I mean, look, what kind of co-curricular activities you want to focus on depends on your own particular liking and your choice, but you should always be involved with different kind of co-curricular activities. As I said, voluntary activities are very important. Okay, so they help you groom yourself, because without those, you are never going to be very successful in practical life, because then you will be limited to what you have learned in the books, which is very good, but to apply them in the real life, you actually need to have an experience of the real life as well. Sports definitely helps you if you can manage it. Again, it's all about managing your time, how you actually manage. If you like music, it promotes creativity, so by all means you should be involved. But every time you need to know your limits. Right. You need to say, okay, now this is enough for my music. Now it's time for me to go back to my actual work that I want to do. And it's about being very clear-headed of what you want to achieve. So, I mean, currently I'm involved in a number of projects related to my own field, and I'm trying to send students for example, internships to Manchester. So my students, I select them and we actually help them, and they are then sent to Manchester University, National Composites Certification and Evaluation Facility. So when I send them, I also tell them, look, this is a chance for you to go there, not to just look at the technical aspect, but actually to look at the whole culture and actually to experience firsthand all those things, so that you can equip yourself, and when you next actually take the next step and actually go for further education or for jobs or things like that. So it's very important that you involve in all those activities.
So in the end, most of the students of Pakistan head abroad for higher studies, and then they work there and prefer to settle there. That leads it to brain drain. So I think that it leaves a very bad impact on our country. So what's your view on this regard?
I'm 50-50 on this. Simply because, yes, there is the effect of brain drain, as you may want to call it. But it's not always like that. People sitting in the Silicon Valley mostly are Indians, and they have supported their country in a big way. Okay, so it's not always like that. Many people who go abroad, they become a very good ambassador of our country. I know of many people who are there in education field, and then that helps you establish your international linkages. So we can always link with them. We can always have our exchange programs running with those people. So it's not always in a bad sense, but yes, we also need qualified people back in our country. But the problem is that we need, it's a free world, and the kind of world that you are now living in, these borders are becoming more and more fluid every day. And I think next 50 years or so, you will find my statement to be very true, that these borders will actually become very fluid, okay, for all practical purposes. Take the example of European Union, for example, okay. Practically, the borders have disappeared. With one Schengen visa, you can move about in all Schengen states.
Right.
Similarly, European Union people can work in any country without any visa restriction.
Right.
So effectively, those borders are already becoming fluid. And this is the very nature of human beings. This is not something which is new. I mean, we are a witness to this as part of our caliphate. You see, and when we were born, had a very big Muslim caliphate. People used to move very freely. It's only this concept of nationhood which appeared in the 17th and 18th century, to be very precise, because of the colonialism.
Right.
So you see, that actually started making these boundaries very important, because it was very important for the colonialist to actually create these boundaries so that they cannot have an effective resistance against them. But people by their nature are always open to this. They will move to different places. They will move to any place where they find more opportunities. So what's the solution? The solution is to provide those requisite opportunities here in this country. Only then you will be. It will never happen by making some laws to actually stop people from going. No, it will happen. The brain drain will stop if we actually start correcting ourselves and providing people with those opportunities which will attract them to come back to this country.
What are your hobbies?
Oh, not much now, as I said. Mostly it's related with studying. So of course I like and I love reading books. I also love swimming, although I don't really get a lot of time for that. I used to play squash as well, but for that as well, I'm hardly finding any time now. So really, if you ask me my hobby these days, it's just reading a good book, just to kind of relax myself.
Okay.
Do you like movies and dramas?
Well, yes, movies. I do watch movies, although I don't watch a lot of movies, but I always like movies with some historical connotations. and also I like sci-fis. Um, I mean, I think if in terms of historical movies, I think my favorite movie is actually Braveheart. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
so because that's the story of courage.
Yes.
You know,
One
how
of the best movies.
yes, one of the best movies of its time. So I do like them. But then I also like the things like the Matrix. So
That's in a fantasy world.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sci-fi or
Right.
pure realism.
Okay. So in the end, I would just like to say that, as you know, the youth of every nation is the asset of that nation. So what advice would you give to the youth of Pakistan for a brighter and more sparkable future of Pakistan?
Well, I mean, as you just said, youth is the biggest asset, and I think the first thing that we as elders need to learn is to trust our youth,
Right.
and that's why my only message to our youth is follow your heart. Okay, follow your heart.
Thank you so much for being with us, sir, today. Thank you so much. And this was Dr. Rizwan Saeed with us today. Thank you so much.